So, what is your name and what are you doing now professionally?
My name is Clint Wilson, and I'm a worship leader at Perimeter Road Baptist Church. I'm also a musician. I give music lessons and play various shows and performances here and there. Former mass media student at Valdosta State University.
Okay. What kind of projects have you produced and what was it?
When you talk about projects, you're talking event, these
Hmm.
events.
Yeah.
Okay. I've produced several, I would say, kind of small to medium scale music festivals. Back home in Folkestone, Georgia, we started up a bluegrass festival over there that was twice a year. I was in charge of booking the entertainment. I served as sort of an entertainment liaison. I worked in between the artists. I booked the artists, put together the schedule and all that kind of stuff. And I put them in contact, or I was their contact person with the venue owner. And so I basically produced the show that we held there at Newell Lodge in Folkestone. We did that. We started that in 2011, and I did my last one in March of 2013. I've since stepped down from that, so just due to time and my job here at the church. And here at the church, I do a variety of different events. We have a big conference that we're doing once a year in the fall, where we're getting together different speakers, and we'll speak on a different subject. And then we hosted last year. We hosted Matt Papa, who is a recording artist, Christian recording artist, fairly well known, who he came in and led in a night of worship here. And I was in charge of that from the ground up, getting him here and all that.
In your opinion, have most of those projects been successful?
Yeah, I think that they were successful at the intended goal. The Bluegrass Festival thing, it kind of stalled for a little bit, but there's lots of things, other things going on around that, so I can't really judge that fairly. But yeah, everything has been, fairly successful as far as the objective. We were building that festival from the ground up, so we knew going into it there wasn't going to be any profit or anything for the first several years as we built the brand and built the audience and everything, and it was growing, to the point that I stepped down from the role that I was playing. The conference is did pretty well. Yeah.
So my next question would have been, how did you measure that? But I think for the most part, you kind of answered that.
Yeah, I would measure the success of an event. That's something you should have some sort of metric before you start it, so that you have some sort of goal. So like I said, our Bluegrass Festivals, the goal was building the attendance and really kind of cultivating a more sophisticated bluegrass scene in South Georgia was part of the goal there. So just seeing that grow, and that's something that would take time, so it's hard to measure, but right off the bat. But the conference here, it's mainly based off of attendance and then response afterwards. So if people seem to really grasp and understand what we were talking about in the conference and really kind of grow an understanding of what the conference topic was, that's kind of a success to me.
Okay. How did you? And for the sake of the questions, we'll focus on the Bluegrass Festival. But how did you fund the project?
The funding for the Bluegrass Festivals came from the venue owners. So I wasn't really at risk in that I wasn't putting any of my money out. Like I said, I was basically contracting for them to produce the entertainment side of the event. Now they handled all the the lodging and all the food vendors and all that. They handled that, but I was just mainly a middleman.
Gotcha. How about the Matt Papa concert? Do you have more to do with the funding for that?
For Matt Papa concert, the church provided the funding for that, but we also sold tickets to Recoup. Okay, so according to the contract that we agreed on with Matt Papa, we had to provide X amount of money up front, and to guarantee X amount of money. And so our goal was, okay, so the church provided that money, and then the ticket sales recouped that money the church fronted.
Okay. So how did you budget the Matt Papa concert? So you talked about like how to raise money, but how about the budgeting for it?
Okay. Budgeting the Matt Papa concert. There's a budget that I operate out of here as the worship leader. We have our own worship ministry budget that the church agreed upon, votes on, and approves. And so there's a line item in that budget that I call worship training, and I use that budget to take care of some of the upfront costs. So, for buying food for the conference. So all that stuff was kind of tied in together. The Matt Papa concert and the conference was, in my mind, one event. So if it's food, if it's the deposit to pay Matt Papa, his agent, that stuff came out of that line item in our church budget that I have, yearly. But that doesn't cover the whole sum of what we agreed upon to pay Matt Papa. So that came from the greater church budget. And I'm not sure what that was right off the top of my head. I just looked at budgeting. Okay, I knew how many seats we have in our room, and then the number of people that I kind of thought would come. It's very much estimation for this event. I mean, we have a better grasp going into next year, but I had a kind of a number that I knew that we would realistically, more optimistically hit, but it was kind of a happy medium number. And so then I went from that. Okay, so this is a certain amount of money, so this is what we can afford to pay an artist. I had Matt Papa in mind from the get-go, just because of his philosophy and things, so it just kind of stemmed off what our church could sustain, and then I just kind of went from that, and then all right, we got to stay within this idea. So my line item, my budget money from the budget that I've been allotted, plus what I thought we could recoup in ticket sales, realistically, without losing a ton of money.
Okay. So what was the biggest surprise in making your project? Or in organizing it, I guess I'd say.
The biggest surprise for me was we had quite a bit lower attendance at the concert than I expected, but we had higher attendance at the conference, which kind of helped even it out a little bit. But the concert was lower attended than I expected. So that was a bit of a surprise. But then again, it goes back to, I could easily say it was unsuccessful because it was lower attended, but that wasn't my goal necessarily. So when we go back to how we measure success, my goal was to see growth in our understanding of worship, which was what the topic of the conference was. And so, it was just a great night for everyone's spiritual growth. And that was the number one priority. So I would love to have seen it, full, right? That was a bit of a surprise. And so we're evaluating now. Okay, since that was what happened last year, like why did that happen, and what do we do? How do we respond to that?
Okay. So, what was the biggest mistake you made along the way?
Biggest mistake I made along the way. I think I overestimated and assumed that there would be more support from the area, surrounding area. Valdosta into Thomasville, into Tallahassee, in North Florida, that are surrounding area. I expected a little more, I guess, buzz and attendance from that area, and that didn't really happen. And so with the budget we had, I couldn't really advertise, to that area other than just social media and a few radio ads here and there. So I think I was just overestimated in the front side of things when you're looking at the Matt Papa concert. Probably could have went with a lesser known, so read cheaper act, but because of the attendance is the reason I'm saying this, but at the end of the day, it goes back to he did exactly what we wanted, and couldn't have got that from anyone else. So I think my biggest mistake was just kind of, maybe not getting out there and pushing it in the surrounding areas. I kind of stayed kind of one track minded in the promotion of the event, and so I could have worked a little harder at being more intentional with how I was advertising.
Gotcha. Can you name one person that you met through the project that has had a lasting impact on your career?
Yeah, man. Really, Matt's band and whole crew. They're really top-notch people, professional. I've worked around musicians my whole entire life, and musicians can be egotistical and very standoffish. But these guys were super humble, they weren't asking for a lot, but just the realness, the down to earthness that they had, but yet the professionalness as well. So like I'm thinking of their sound guy, he top notch audio guy. He knows his stuff. And so easy to deal with. He's not overbearing. He's not barking out commands, but just he's the kind of person you want to follow. So as a leader, I kind of want to embody those traits, because they're not being heavy-handed leaders, but they're just being the type of people you want to follow because of their personality. And so that was very helpful and will make a lasting impact on me for sure.
If you had to do it over again, I know you kind of answered this, what would you do differently?
Well, I do have to do the Matt Papa thing again. So I do have to do the conference thing again. So what I'm evaluating now is do we bring in an outside artist to close the night off?
Right.
Because the conference was a huge success. It went off great. It's accomplished everything we want to do, and so my focus has kind of shifted more to really developing that as the event, and so I'm just kind of evaluating, should we bring in an outside artist, or should our own church musicians do that, or do we even need to have a concert that night? So that was what I would do differently, just figuring out how to do that.
Right.
the next time.
Um, Based off of the fact that you performed in the bluegrass festival that you had, correct?
Yes.
And then now you're talking about possibly an inside act, which might be probably yourself involved in the worship conference. Do you find it to be a little odd to promote a conference and then to be the person that performs, or is that probably a really natural thing?
Um, it's a really being the person that is promoting an event that you're also performing in. Um, I can see how that would seem kind of odd for people, but for me, it's pretty natural because that's kind of the nature of the beast when you're a kind of semi-professional musician. You know, you don't have the full management teams and things like that. So you're promoting. If you don't promote yourself, then no one's going to promote you, kind of thing. So you get used to doing that. Um, the biggest con to that is just simply being exhausted when the event's going on. Like, so the Bluegrass Festival, I was the one responsible for producing the event, the entertainment for the event. I also ran sound for the event. The bands are coming to me to kind of get settled in. Okay, what do we do? What do we do? Of course, I did have someone set up, to take care of that, take that off of me. But still, I'm the one that they've been talking to, so they find their way to me. I'm running sound, and then we've got to perform 2 sets, or one long set, because that was kind of a home thing for us. So like our band was kind of like the host band, I guess you'd say. And so it was a little more relaxed, so it was okay if I wore, sound man clothes up on stage, instead of my stage clothes. But it was just exhausting. And you really, I felt like our music suffered during that because obviously I didn't have time. I was coming straight off the soundboard with cold hands and running straight up on stage and playing a set, and then, but again, it was kind of understood because of what was going on. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it if you could avoid it. So thanks for calling that out.
So how well do you think, like not based on a specific genre, but how well do you think a music festival would do in Valdosta if it was promoted well?
You would think a music festival would go well in Valdosta just because of the sheer number of kind of youngish people, with the military base and the college and, young families. But there's not much of a music culture in Valdosta anymore. Not in my experience. I've only been here, a few years, but from what I just kind of gather and have heard people say that there's not. I mean, I remember moving over here expecting to be, there would be a music scene really, college town. It's like, okay, cool. It's really not that much. Not even in the bar scene, it's not that good. But I don't know. I'm skeptical, honestly, just because what I've seen. I know we actually played a bluegrass festival in Lake Park years ago, and it did okay. I mean, it wasn't nothing spectacular, but I don't know how well they promoted that. So that's the key. That's the key to any sort of event is promotion. You've got some serious competition here in Valdosta with Spirit of the Swanee in Lake Park. Or not Lake Park, I'm sorry, Spirit of Swanee in Live Oak. That's an established park. They've been going, over 30 years, I think. And I know the Cornett family well, who own the campground there, and it started small, and now, it's huge. They have huge festivals there. And so a lot of your music people here in Valdosta, are committed to Spirit of Swanee, and they have multiple events throughout the year. So, I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be done, it might be difficult, but I think the key is getting the people who are passionate about live music in Valdosta involved in putting it together and promoting it. Because you're going to have that team. If you're just pushing it, if it's just one person trying to pour money into it and do it, it's not going to work. When people are too set in their ways and routines here in Valdosta, it's not going to work. You're going to have to get a group of people who are passionate about it to support it and promote it, and just be committed to it. If you do that, then you might can make something happen. But without that, I don't see anything. I don't see one dude, say some guy wants to do it by himself. I don't see him being able to do it here. Even some of the Wild Adventures concerts, they don't do extremely well, and they're free with the cost of your ticket, your admission. So it's just there needs to be some development in the music scene, and how you do that, I don't know. But I think it is key to find the people who are doing it and rally them together around that mission of making it flourish in Valdosta.
Considering the demographic and with there being so many younger generation people here in Valdosta, do you think that there may be some genres that would succeed better than others? Not to hate on bluegrass or anything, but I know it's not as popular with the younger generation. So
yeah, sure. Bluegrass isn't pulling in the numbers for the younger generation that your more pop music things are. And I wasn't really talking about a bluegrass festival in particular. That was just the one festival I was aware of in Valdosta. When you look at the crowds at the Spirit Swine, they are younger, but it is that kind of more folk Americana music that's popular. The Avett Brothers and that style of stuff, which is sort of like bluegrass, but kind of not, but that's their crowd that they've been successful with. They do the country music festival there that's big too, Swanee River Jam. I was speaking kind of generally when I was talking about success. Now, as far as genres that are popular, I think it's going to be kind of even across the board. If you look at just your kind of run-of-the-mill pop genres, whether it's country or hip hop or like top 40 pop or even the more folk stuff. I feel like the enthusiasm would be kind of across the board, even there. Just that's my assumption. I have no really basis on which to make that claim, but that's my assumption just from what I've seen. You would think like country music would do well, but where's the venues? I think there's not a cool venue that I'm aware of. You've got that's the thing about Spirit Swanee down there. It's an awesome venue. It's beautiful. I haven't seen anything like that around here. So where would we host something like that?
Gotcha.
Because that's part of it too. That's part of the vibe. Even that bluegrass festival we were doing in Folkestone, the place itself, the venue itself, was kind of the draw. It was beautiful. Nice live oak trees just everywhere. It's beautiful. And so that's the venue in itself is the draw. So you build your package, your show, kind of based on the vibe of the venue. So that raises a whole nother box of issues we could talk about. I know I'm not giving you any direction.
No. That's good. Kind of based on everything you're talking about, I know this is a really big, broad question, but is there any specific thing that you could say is a big key to success that, like, if you're trying to plan an event, you cannot forget to do this?
I would say budget, over budget for promotion. Go figure a number that you think you're going to need for promotion, and then do more than that. Budget more, plan for more than that. Because I mean, in this age of promotion and advertising everywhere, it's easy for your event to get lost in the noise. All right, so you've got to beat the bushes to make it be seen. They have that old saying or whatever that until someone sees an ad 3 times, they don't even know they saw it the first time. It's true. I mean, you've got to get it out in many different outlets and targeted well, but you just definitely can't afford to slack on promotion, and so you need to allocate funds to be able to do that well. I would say, even if you had to cut down the quality of your entertainment, that you could, if you had to cut that back by 20% and then add 20% promotion, it would probably be better. Sad to say that, because you would think that the top-notch talent would just naturally draw people, but it draws only a few people anymore. I mean, it's a sad state of the music industry that talent itself doesn't draw. So you've got to find that balance by putting on a good, professional quality show, but also getting butts in the seat so you don't, lose money. And you've got to be, you've got to be willing to if it's going to be a repeating event, you've got to have that in mind, that, hey, the first 3 years, 3 to 5 years, we're going to hope we break even. And then once we start building that name up, then that's where you start seeing it grow. I mean, you ask any festival promoter that, they'll tell you that's true. Like, don't expect to make a ton of money within the first. And I was being very optimistic with 3 to 5 years. There's a guy, of course, there's a guy told us one time that unless you're willing to put on 10 events, don't even put on the first one, because it takes time. He's talking about biannual events, so that's 5 years, to build up your brand and your reputation, so that you actually start making good money at it.
And then the last one, just briefly, what is probably one of the big things that you would think is really important to do when you're trying to plan an event, but in your experience really isn't all that important, if there is anything you can think of?
Something that you would think is important, but really isn't.
Like, if I was going to plan an event and this thing, I might be like, man, like this has to be done right. Like, this is top priority, but it's really not that big of a deal when it comes down to it. If there even is anything
Yeah,
like that.
I'm not coming up with anything.
Mm-hmm. Everything's pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole, putting on a music event, it's one big package of multiple things. So, like, from the planning stages, to coming up with, really what's the vibe and what's the product we're going to be putting out. Like, is it what genre of music, what kind of what's the word I'm looking for? what kind of artists, like even within the same genre. So like, what kind of image do you want this festival to have? Do you want it to be kind of let your hair down hippie festival, or do you want it to be a sophisticated like jazz festival, or you know what I'm saying? So you, that planning stage is crucial because that's going to determine all your planning after that and everything you do. So everything from the planning stages, the earliest planning stages, to the actual execution of the event is key. So like even the hospitality aspect for the artists. If you're not treating them well and making sure they have what they need to perform well, then you're missing out. That might be something you seem like maybe you can neglect because it's behind the scenes, but that directly impacts the performance of the artist. And if you're looking at an event in the future, it also affects your relationship with the artist. So if you treat them bad, they're going to charge you more if they even do it again, the next time. So I mean, every little thing builds up into this one package, and so I try to treat each aspect of it and do it the best you can. Because if you do, skimp on a certain area, it'll show. Definitely. If it doesn't show, it'll at least stress you out, and then that'll show because you're stressed out. So I can't think of anything, and not to say that there isn't anything. I just can't think of anything right now that seems important, but really isn't.